Hey everybody, welcome back for the second lesson on bar chords. But before we get into the actual lesson, I just wanted to mention that there is a chord chart in the description here. It's a PDF and it's got all of the chords charted out for these two lessons on bar chords, okay? So it doesn't have every bar chord in the world because there's so many that you can play, but it's got a few examples and the key ones that we used in these lessons to demonstrate how to make the bar chord. So you might want to print that out and have it in front of you when you're doing this lesson, but you'll certainly want it later on when you're practicing. So we've done one lesson where we talked about the E form bar chords, okay? So the E form and the E minor form bar chords. And now we're going to do another set using the A chord as the basis of it. So those are called the A form bar chords, okay? No big mystery there. And so when we did the E form bar chord, what we did was we had our E chord here, okay? And we made a little shift in it to use our, instead of using our 1, 2, 3 fingers, to use our 2, 3, 4 fingers. So we had our index finger left over to be the nut that we would move around, be our bar. And we practiced it up here on the 5th fret. We had our bar here, and then we made the rest of the E chord with our 2, 3, and 4 fingers, like this. And we got an A bar chord, an A chord out of that, okay? And then we did A minor as well, using the E minor form. And we just slid that up and used our finger, our index finger as the bar, as the new nut. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing with the A chord, okay? Now when we made an A chord, this is what we had down here. 1, 2, 3 going across. Okay. And now we need to somehow turn that into a bar chord, right? And just like we were doing with the E chord, we got to use our index finger to be our nut, to be our bar that we're going to move around. And it's part of making this A chord, so we got to do something else, okay? One thing we could do is to do what we did with the E chord, which is instead of using 1, 2, 3 to fret the strings, we could use 2, 3, 4, right? And then have our index finger for the bar. But that is an uncomfortable stretch, okay? If you try to do it, you'll feel what I mean immediately. It's hard to have your 3 fingers in the right position there on those strings and still be able to get your hand, your index finger over there far enough to get a good solid bar on that fret. And so people do it, some people do it, some, you know, but it's a stretch and most people don't. They do something else instead. What do? Well, instead of modifying the 1, 2, 3 version of the A chord, they instead modify the one where we had one finger covering those 3 strings. Okay, remember that version of the A chord? Okay. And I told you that I usually play it that way. And the reason is because that's what maps on to this A bar chord form, okay? And so what we do is, instead of, though, using our middle finger, because that, again, makes kind of a difficult, uncomfortable stretch to get our index finger all the way back here to be the nut, right? That's a hard stretch. We use our ring finger, so we swap out our middle finger down here for our ring finger, and then it's a little bit easier to get this index finger in the right position to be the sliding nut, to be the bar. Okay, so that's what we do. Okay, so right now I'm just using my ring finger, but now I'm going to slide up, and I'm going to put my index finger down to be the bar, and I've got my ring finger here to cover the 3 strings. And so it looks like this. So now I'm using an A form, but I've just slid it up to the 5th fret, okay? And there you have it. Okay, so we had our A chord here, using the E form, and now we've got our, we're using the A form, but what we're making is a D chord. So A, we're making an A chord, using the E form, and we're making a D chord using the A form, right? And so that D should sound like our other D that we had before. There's the D major chord, there's a D major chord. Okay, so same chord, just making it on two different parts of the neck using a different form. Okay, different chord form. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so now you've got the D chord down on the 5th fret, and you using this A form, you can slide it around and make all kinds, just like we did with the E form. You know, if you go up here, this is an E. You go down here, this is a B, B flat, D flat, or C sharp. Same thing, C sharp, D flat. Right? And so now, by learning this A form, again, you've picked up 10 more chords. Okay, just learning that one form. Now, this is another one that is a little tough. I think most people feel like it's a little easier than the E form. You're only using 2 fingers, but you still got to push all 6 of those strings down, and you know, it's a lot. You know, it takes time to build up the muscles to do that, okay? But it's probably not quite as hard as the E form. They're similar, okay? But those are the 2 primary bar chord forms, and when you have them down, you know, you make modifications to those and you make all kinds of different chords. So it really works great. It's super powerful. That's why these bar chords are so great, is because you get so much out of them. And you're going to see, we're going to get even more out of them as we go forward. Okay? All right, now before we finish up here, let's talk about the A minor. Okay, since we got the A down here, we might as well do the A minor one too, just like we did E minor when we did the E form. And so remember, our A minor chord was like this. Okay. But we got the same problem that we had when we're doing the E one, is that we got to reserve our index finger for the nut. And so we can't use 1, 2, 3 like in this chord chart. We can't use that to do the bar form because we got to have our index finger for the bar. So what do? Well, we use 2, 3, 4 instead, okay? And so it looks like this. And if you look at that for a second, you'll realize that that is exactly the same as we did with the E major form, right? Except it's just over 1 set of strings, okay? So it's 1 set of strings higher than when we did the E form. We did that, and then now we're just moving it 1 set of strings higher, and we've got the A minor, right? And now we've got our index finger left over to be the bar, so we can slide it around. So we had up here on 5, we were playing a D, and now we're playing a D minor. So we've got these fingers in this position, and we've got our bar. There's a D minor. Remember our other D minor down here? See? Same chord. Okay. And so now you've got 4 bar chords: the E form, the E minor form, the A form, and the A minor form. But you've really picked up 44 chords by doing that, and just learned 4 things, right? And 2 of them are just really simple variants of the other one. So, you know, just a little bit of additional chord form material, and you picked up 44 chords, okay? Up to this point, well, what have we known? About 6 chords? Okay, and then in these 2 lessons, we just picked up 44 chords. It's really powerful, okay? On the A form chords, I didn't mention, but they're named on the basis of not your lowest string, but your next lowest string, the A string, okay? So when we're playing an A chord, that open string is what names the A chord. That's the root note. Even though we're playing an E lower, it's really an A chord with a root of A. And so all of those A form bar chords are named on the basis of what note you're playing on that A string, okay? So if we go up here, we're on the 5th fret. It's this note here on the A string, on on the 5th fret that's naming that chord. So we were open, it was A, then it was A sharp, go up 1 fret, B, then C, nothing between B and C, C sharp, D. And that's how we know that's a D chord. Because that note on the A string is a D. So if we slide up here, well, that note on the A string is now an E. So that's an E chord. It's a higher version of the same chord. E, E. Okay? So it's named on the basis of that string. So it's a C down here, okay? B flat down here. And it all has to do with what note you're playing on the A string. Okay? Okay, one other thing about now that we've got these chord forms down is that you want to practice switching between them. And it's not too bad. I mean, once you can play them, the switching isn't terrible. And I'll show you why. Okay? So here's the A chord. We're playing an A bar chord using the E form. So we're on the 5th fret. Okay? Here we go. And then I'm going to want to switch over to the D. Okay, the D chord. So I'm using the A form on that. Okay, and I want to go back and forth between those two. Okay, well, it's fairly easy because when I'm playing the A, what I'm going to do to switch to D is I'm going to pick up my middle finger and my pinky, and then I'm going to kind of roll or rock my ring finger off of the A string and let it go down and cover all 3 of those ones I need to cover in the A form. So it's kind of like a little roll. And you want to practice that and practice going back and forth between them. So when you're coming off of the A form, the D chord, you got to just kind of roll that ring finger back up and grab the A string, and then put your pinky back down and your middle finger. Okay? That'll take some practice. Don't get me wrong, that ain't going to be automatic, but it's not the hardest thing in the world to do. Getting the basic bar chord down, you'll find harder than doing that switch, I think, learning that switch. So, but you know, when you're learning those shifts, you've got to do them a bunch of times. And so, you know, start off slow, just go, you know, and maybe hit twice on each one. And I like to hit twice when I'm learning a chord. I like to do a double hit like that because a lot of times when you do the shift, you didn't quite get there all the way by the time you do the first hit. And so by the time you get to the second one, you can kind of shift and straighten it out and get done and actually have a decent sounding chord. So it gives you a little bit of you know, room to get there. Just you know, get all the way there before you start going off it to the next one. But hit it 4 times if you want. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch. 2, 3, 4. And do it super slow so you can do it. But it gives you some time to settle in to the chord. You don't have to just get it right on the first try. And you never get any of them there because by the time you didn't quite get there on that one, but now you got to run back to the other one. Well, if you stay on it a couple times, it gives you a chance to kind of shift around a little bit, you know, to change the pressure in your hand. And so doing it 4 times or doing it 2 times, I think will be helpful to you as part of your practice technique. Okay. I think there was something else I was going to say about that, but well, eventually you shift to just doing it 1 time, you know, so you can practice that once you're feeling more comfortable with it, and speed it up. Okay, and you'll get better at it from doing that. Okay, these chords, that shift, the relationship between those 2 chords is a very strong one, and so you find tons of songs where you're using those chords together. In fact, you have, and we'll experience this in the next lesson where I give you songs where you have this E form one, then you have the A form one right next to it, and then you slide up 2 frets, and those 3 chords will be the core of so many songs. If you go down 1 fret, 2 more frets down here to G, since this is A, we got A flat, G, G. That's a G. And if we hit the A form one next to it, it's a C. And we go up 2 frets, it's a D. And remember, we've learned all those songs with G, C, and D. That relationship among those 3 chords is really powerful, and it's everywhere. And so, once again, you have all your G, C, D songs. Like that, okay? All right. Let me go back to one other thing. You remember when we were learning the minor chords, we skipped G minor and C minor. We skipped G minor and C minor. So we'll do them later. We got to learn something else first, okay? This is the thing that we had to learn, bar chords, okay? To play a G minor chord, you use the E minor form. So it's the one we're playing down here at E minor. But if we slide that up 3 frets, E, F, F sharp, G, there's our G minor chord. And that's how most people will play a G minor chord. Okay? Instead of trying to do something with opening and trying to get that B flat in there, they use this E minor form on the 3rd fret to get the G minor. And so that's how you typically play a G minor. To get a C minor, the other one we skipped, which is also hard to get in the open form, people most typically use the A minor form, okay, and it's just up 3 frets. So this is A, so A minor, so there's the note on the A string is A, B flat, B, C, right? And so if we slide that up to the 3rd fret, we're going to get a C minor chord. And so that's how people typically play the C minor chord as well. Okay, so when you see that C minor, you're going to go for a bar chord. Same thing with the G minor. You see the G minor? You're going for that bar chord form of the G minor. Okay, and those are much easier to play than some kind of open chord variant of those. Okay, so that's why we skipped them. And so, but now you know how to play them because you know how to play bar chords. Okay. Okay, one last thing, and we'll cap off this lesson on bar chords. You may be thinking to yourself, we learned other open chords besides E and A. Couldn't we make bar chords out of them, right? So the 3 biggies that we learned are C, D, and G, right? Those are the 3 big open chords, G, C, D. Couldn't we take those and slide those up too and add a nut to them? And yes, technically you can do that. You can do that. But it's kind of tough because it's a bigger stretch with those ones, okay? When we're playing an E chord, we're just playing frets that are the first 2 frets, right? They're going to be pretty close to the bar. On the A form, they're all in the 2nd one, and same with the minors, they're all in the 1st and 2nd frets, and so they're pretty easy to reach and still get your nut. But when you're playing a D, you're playing a note up on the 3rd fret, and when you're playing a G, you're playing 2 up on the 3rd fret, all right? And a C, you're playing 1 up on the 3rd fret, and it's harder to finger those and then still get that bar. You've got to stretch a lot farther. Now, some people can do it, and if you've got bigger hands, like Steve Vai or one of these, Paul Gilbert, these guys have gigantically long fingers. They do it all the time, right? But most of us, for most guitar players, it's just not something you can do easily. And if you just try it, you'll see what I mean. So you've got your D chord, but you've got to use your other fingers to do it, and then you've still got to have your index finger down there to be the nut. And it's hard to do that. It really is. You'll see when you do it. It's just a hard stretch. Why do that? You've got a D bar chord using the A form right here. Why you got to bother with all that? Okay. Same thing with the C. Here's the C. And if you do it with and try to make a bar chord out of it, you got to use these 3 fingers to get it, and then you got to reach all the way across and get that, and it's hard to do. Okay, it's just not comfortable. G is probably even worse, although more people do that, and there's a reason why, but we won't probably get to that in this course. But it's hard to reach. Just put your fingers, use your ring finger on the lowest string, your middle finger on the A string, and then your pinky back here on the high E string. Okay, but now you've got to cover the open strings with your index finger, and that is a stretch. That is a real stretch. Well, don't do that. You've got a G right here, and you can slide that around to get the A or whatever it is that you want to get. It's just much easier to use the E and the A form and just go another couple frets than it is to try to use those forms. So virtually nobody does that. It's just too much. It's too hard, and there's something else that gives you the same thing that's really close by and much, much easier. So we almost exclusively use the E and the E minor form and the A and the A minor form for bar chords. Okay. All right. Last little tip I wanted to give you before we cap this lesson off. I gave you a couple tips. I'm trying to make this easier last time, and I'm going to give you one more this time, and that's about the position of your elbow. Okay. Sometimes when people are working on these bar chords, they kind of start, getting their elbow way out here because they're trying to put pressure on the neck to get those fingers down. That's not a good idea. That's actually counterproductive, okay? Because even though it feels like you're generating more torque, you're really having the pressure go in the wrong direction, okay? And so you want to try, if you're having trouble, make sure you've got your elbow in. Now you don't have to hold it in tightly, but don't let it fly out there like that. That's actually twisting your hand in a way that's going to make it more difficult, and it's harder to keep your thumb in the right position on the back of the neck too when you're doing that. It's forcing your thumb up, and you don't want to do that. So keep your elbow in, and that will make it easier to make those bar chords, okay? But generally speaking, do what feels comfortable when you're learning the guitar. People sometimes overemphasize getting all these little technical things right, so that you won't, be causing, developing a bad habit that will cause you problems later on. Yeah, that's right, mostly, but there's just too many of them to keep track of, and it's better for you to feel good while you're playing, so you keep playing. Okay, that's really more important, and that's something I always want to emphasize in this course: is try to do things that feel comfortable. Try to do them in ways that feel comfortable, so that you'll be motivated to sit down and play the guitar and enjoy it, instead of it being a torture or a task. Okay, that's what we want to avoid. We want this to be really fun for you. Okay, all right, that's it for bar chords. It's great stuff, and I really hope that you will maybe take a little time here after you see the songs in the next lesson, and just maybe pause on moving forward in the course and just really work on this until you feel reasonably comfortable with those bar chords. They will mean a lot to you. And if you can get that down, it'll also help you with some other stuff that's coming up in the rest of the course. So I really want you to take the time to what do you want to do? You want to spend enough time with bar chords that you get to be friends with them. Okay, they're not your enemy that you got to fight. They are a powerful ally for you in guitar playing. So make friends with them, get to know them, and I think you'll be very, very happy when you do, and it'll put you in a different place as a guitar player. Okay? See you next time for some bar chord songs.